Yeah, guys, but obviously the 10th region is void. Ixtal doesn't exist. Obviously, Malphite's gonna be in Targon. God, there was a Reddit post, like, God, do you guys remember that? There was a Reddit post like 3 weeks ago after the Dova Geddes interviews sometime where they were like, really, they were bringing forward so many arguments why the 10th region couldn't possibly be void or something like that. I have no idea, like, I don't know enough about, like, you know, all the lore, but I mean, from my layman perspective, it did feel kind of unlikely that the last region wouldn't be void. Wait a second, where was that? I want to find that Reddit post about void 10th region. Why the 10th region won't be void. The principles of LoR's region system. Why there's only one possibility for the 10th region. And I believe I skimmed it. I didn't read any of this, but I believe it wasn't void. Okay. This is actually going to be good because it looks well written. And, you know, I mean, it's got a lot of upvotes and a lot of whatever the fuck these are. I don't use Reddit. I see so many people on the subreddit misunderstanding the logic behind 10th region system and coming up with predictions that contradict everything we've seen in the cards so far. It's important to know some important leaked upcoming champions to understand the region system, and I'll be using these as examples. So Malphite from Targon, Rek'Sai from Shurima, and Zilean from Shurima. We can discern the following principles. Theme is king. Lore region assignments don't matter. A champion's region assignment on the lore pages is irrelevant. Lore categories don't matter. Categories in the lore without strong thematic meaning are also irrelevant. Misfits go to the best partial fit. Yep, makes sense. To explain the evidence for each more in depth. See, this is some well-written shit. I mean, again, I have no idea if I'll agree with the conclusion. Lore's regions are defined by theme. Think of a theme as a set of keywords or phrases that define the aesthetic or gameplay or concept. For example, you could define the theme as shadow elves, as spooky ghosts and ghouls, deaths, and as oriental fusion aesthetic. Stereotypical Chinese, Japanese, Korean, e.g. ninjas, samurais, and zen, and fae. P&Z is steampunk, and yeah, I mean, pretty much everything you'd expect. You can come up with some other keywords for each region, but you get the picture. Each champion's identity is also defined by the theme. For example, Nocturne is a shadow that feeds on nightmares, Malphite is a big walking mountain rock, and Lulu is a Yordle face sorceress that polymorphs. Looking at this, it's pretty clear why Nocturne is Shadow Isles, Shadow to Shadow region, Malphite is Targon, and Lulu is Ionia, even though there's not the regions in the lore. So what are these guys' regions of the lore? I know Nocturne is like from Demacia, and I know Malphite is like from Ixtal. Apparently it's pronounced Ixtal. If I'm gonna pronounce it Ixtal, I'm gonna have to start doing it now before Ixtal is in my head. And Lulu is from Bandle City, but Bandle City isn't in this game, so like that one feels like a bit of an exception, right? Because Bandle City isn't actually in PNZ, right? Is it near PNZ? Bandle City is in another dimension. It's everywhere. What the fuck? What? All right. Sure. Makes sense. Demacia and Noxus are a bit unique for a lot of the champions. Their nationality is their identity. They're strongly color-coded and constantly yell their country's name. For example, Darius and Garen are basically big burly soldier with two-handed weapon. Lore region assignments don't matter. Many in theme are not in regions. They haven't been visited by lore. Lore is malleable. A lot of champion lore was made way after the champions were created or released. Yep. I mean, this is all correct. This is all correct. The misfits go to the best partial fit. Yeah, and then there's... Yeah, Bandle City is like you guys are saying, Bandle City just doesn't really exist in any of these regions. So like Teemo, I guess, makes sense in Zon. And yeah, a lot of the Yordles are like this. Is this also true for Fizz? Process of elimination. Now let's use these roles to eliminate some of the 10th region candidates that many people bring up. Void can't be the 10th region for a few regions. So this is the juicy part. This is the meat. Rek'Sai is a void creature sand shark. Rek'Sai is in Shurima. If Rek'Sai is in Shurima, then Malzahar is also in Shurima. Malzahar clearly has the Bedouin desert nomad motif, and it makes no sense to put Rek'Sai in Shurima but not Malzahar. The reason they probably decided not to put Rek'Sai into the void and make it a region is that it's very hard to force other champions the void, so they'd quickly run out of champions for it. Take a misfit like Ryze. You could come up with a way to put him in Targon or Ixtal, but it wouldn't make sense to put him in the void. You also wouldn't be able to put Darkin champions in without they're seriously diluting their identity and causing distinguishability issues with SI. Instead, Void champions will be distributed to other regions similar to Yordles, as evidenced by Rek'Sai. This is a strong argument. I mean, again, I don't know enough about the lore to conjure like counter arguments, but the logic behind all of this is really solid so far. First, not a real thematic identity. Teemo is the most Bandle city of all the champions, so Bandle city's out too. The Vastians could be, but it doesn't make sense because Vastians are, I've never even heard this word before in my life. What percent of the player base even know which champions are Vastians? Again, Vasta what? Exactly. Certainly the creators of Rengar and Ahri didn't know they were Vastians. So Vastians are the furries, I guess, if they're saying Rengar and Ahri. I've been playing League enough. I've been playing League for like 3 weeks at this point that I know I can identify most of the champions by name. It's like a superpower. If someone says Rengar, and I can immediately say, all right, that's the big cat. Because in League, there's 3 cats. There's like small cat, middle cat, and big cat. And I know Rengar is big cat. So like, I can just see this, and I know exactly what the words are saying. Thus, I can conclude that Vastians are the furry demographic area, which, I mean, I kind of thought the Yordles already were, but whatever. The only possibility left, there are at least 7 champions that are an easy thematic fit for Ixtal. Interesting, interesting. Kha'Zix belongs to Ixtal. See, the thing is, I know it's Ixtal, but I also know it's Demacia. And like, I'm not gonna say Demacia. I refuse to, like, I'm gonna keep saying Demacia. So like, at that point, why would I say Ixtal? Like, I might as well just say Ixtal. Like, it's not Demacia? I don't know. I've just heard a lot of people say that. Listen, I fucking agree. Alright, anyway, according to this guy, is at least 7 champions: Kiana, Nico, Nidalee, Gnar, Rengar, Kha'Zix, Zyra. Kha'Zix belongs to Ixtal in the same way that Rek'Sai belongs to Shurima. Gnar is one of the most Ixtali champions in the game. He's a primal, animalistic caveman who transforms. He fits more into Ixtal than Nidalee even. Before you say Freljord, remember the principles. Freljord is not part of Gnar's identity in any way. When you ask someone to describe Gnar, Freljord would not be one of the words he comes up with. Yep. Very true, very true. Many other champions which they could stretch to fit in. For example, since Void can't be a region, all the Void champions are up for grabs. Here's a list of easy stretch champions. So what do these stretch to? And then there are the champions which are much more iffy. Ahri, Wukong, Lilia, Ivern. The problem with Ahri and Wukong is their core aesthetics are Korean and Chinese, respectively. Wukong is literally just Sun Wukong, and Ahri is a Kumiho wearing Korean clothing. So it'd be jarring to not have them in Ionia. Possibility that there will be some new Ixtali champion. Caveat, Ixtal might not be Ixtal. It might be a combination region similar to PNC. If it is a combination, it probably won't be any of the excluded candidates above. They'd have to find some easier way to introduce Void champions in the region without putting Void in the name, since that would make Rek'Sai's assignment jarring. So, okay, a logical argumentation would focus more on the possible distributions of Ixtal versus Void and the possible ways those would like bend into those arguments. The way this argument is structured, it seems like Void is already being disqualified solely off of like the singular placement of Rek'Sai, which feels a little weak to me. I mean, surely there must be some strange placements. Like I said, I like the structure of this argument. I just think it's over focusing on the Rek'Sai thing and kind of under focusing on the actually like simulating how it would play out if it was Void or how it would play out if it was Ixtal. Rek'Sai completely makes sense to me. And again, from a basic aesthetic standpoint, they've taken so like, I agree with all the premises. This is a well-constructed post. It just makes like 1 or 2 things that I'd call mistakes. All the premises are correct. And the thing is, like, yes, all the conclusions about how they're doing things, it all makes sense. And yeah, I mean, we know Malphite's going to be in Targon because Malphite is one of the ones coming in the next couple of months, and Ixtal won't exist in the next couple of months. So it makes sense for Malphite to go into Targon instead of Ixtal for the same reason as they're putting in here, because it's more about the flavor than anything else. Malphite is a big walking mountain rock, and obviously it makes sense for that to be in Targon. Okay? The only problem is, I do think the same exact logic applies to Rek'Sai. Like, I mean, the assessment here is that, you know, Rek'Sai is like a shadowy, voidy person, and that's definitely true. But as a layman who doesn't know the lore very much, I also know Rek'Sai is like a tunneling worm guy, and that makes sense for Shurima, because they're like a sand desert, and they have like tunneling worms or something like that. I know that Talia has one in her level up animation, because I've seen that level up animation at least one time. It's girl. Yeah, Rek'Sai's a girl. My apologies, guys. Sorry. But yeah, Rek'Sai is like a sand shark, exactly. So like, I think that the same logic that applies to Malphite applies to Rek'Sai completely. I have literally no problem with Void existing and Rek'Sai being in Shurima instead of Void. Like, that would make sense to me. So I wouldn't use this argument as a disqualification for Void at all. I mean, there is a good chance they will have to do some kind of like merge, right? Like, at the end of the day, I think it is fair to say like the 10th region is gonna be kind of shortchanged, right? Like, they're not gonna have as many champions, because like there will just always be more champions that are from, like, you know, Demacia or Noxus or whatever, right? Whereas, I mean, I guess they could combine Void and Ixtal together, but that would be weird, because that's not really, like, you know, thematically coherent. Void can't exist as a region on its own, since they're like 7 Void champions, and it's hard to push champions into Void thematically. Yeah, and that was one of the arguments here, and that's true. That's true. So what are they proposing could be pushed into Ixtal? Are these the Void ones? I don't like, what does this mean? It says these are easy stretch champions. What are these champions? Like, stretched from what? Stretched to what? I think I think he's just saying that these are stretched from Void. I don't know if these are Void people. I mean, I don't know of these three. I know Void is like the purpley dark guys. Xayah and Rakan are Ionians. Oh, stretched into Ixtal. Huh. Interesting. I mean, a lot of it also kind of depends on what their kit does, right? Part of Elise, you know, the decision with Elise is pretty narrow, because like, Elise could have been Noxian. It's definitely like, it was a possibility, but I mean, they wanted her to be like, you know, a summoner, like I summon spiders, and that was just like more Shadow Isles than Noxian. But like, from a flavor standpoint, like I could definitely see like just some like, you know, angry scary lady in Noxus. They seem to have a lot of those. I don't like is that Ixtal has the same issues as Void. Lack of champions, and champs could be put in other regions easily. Ixtal has the issue of no lore. Well, maybe they're using this as an opportunity to expound upon the lore. Void is so easy because its theme is corruption. They will do a thematic event where it corrupts champions from other regions. Okay, so that's definitely the kind of thing that could be a possibility, but I wouldn't use the phrase so easy or the word will. But like, it's not out of the question as an option, I guess. Like, but that's definitely like a low confidence thing that you're referring to. I haven't looked at like, I mean, would the map actually help? Not really. It would help me like visualize it, but like it wouldn't add to these decision points. I mean, I think it's fun to have a visual aid while we're talking. The map helps? Okay. I'm just not seeing how this could help. But I guess, all right, that didn't help, guys. Unless you're trying to tell me that this is definitive proof for it being Ixtal instead of the Void. Which honestly, I mean, this is a really strong argument for. Yeah, you're right. That did actually help. Like, this map literally has bundled Piltover and Zaun together. Correct me if I'm mistaken. I thought Piltover and Zaun was literally like a concession for Legends of Runeterra. Zoom in on the map. Zune, Pepega. Guys, why do I need to zoom? The map has already done what the map wanted to do. Piltover was built on top of Zaun. It's the same city. Huh. Oh, I can see where these champions are from. Oh, Talia is from Belzahun. Nice. Okay, I'll click on Ixtal. So, it's only if I zoom in that we see the Void down here. Ikathia. So the Void has apparently 10 champions. So why is Zillion from the Void? Oh, this is like a fully immersive experience. Attitude towards magic. Devour. Level of technology unknown. Man, this is some fleshed out shit. Jesus Christ. Holy shit. I thought Riot was in the fucking video game market. I was mistaken. All right, that makes a lot of sense. So that was 9 Void champions. Zillion was born there. All right. So basically, there's more Void champions than Ixtal champions, and we don't really know much about Ixtal. I mean, what if we go by like available color palette? See, that's an angle that nobody's actually talking about. But like available color palette. Because like, depending on the exact shade of green they chose for Shadow Isles, and the exact shade of purple they chose for Targon, we can kind of like triangulate on the color wheel where they're leaving themselves room to maneuver. I'm not even doing a bit. I'm actually like very serious. Like, because Shadow Isles, if Ixtal is going to exist, it's going to be green, right? And like, Shadow Isles is a fairly light green. Void could be like really dark purple. Targon's purple is a little bit dark. But I do notice that, like, I mean, at the very least, on some things, like, why is it on like Mobalytics that the Targon color is like more light blue? I guess that's just because of Mobalytics' dark blue background, so Targon has to be light blue there. But in client, Targon is a pretty dark purple. Like, they didn't go for a light purple. They didn't go for a light purple at all. Targon is dark purple. Targon is almost a little too purple. Look at this shade of purple. Hang on. Look at this shade of purple. This is like really fucking purple. I'm just gonna take the color dropper tool. We're gonna do one of those, and we're just gonna brush, okay? Like this is Targon purple. Man, this brush is not very thick. All right, this is Targon purple. Look how dark that is. This is a really dark purple. They could have gone a couple of shades lighter. Whereas the Void, I mean, the Void also wants to be like kind of like a dark purple, blackish, maybe even pink. Right? Does Void is closer to magenta? It's interesting because Void does have like a little black in it, but also a little pink. It's got a bit of spectrum to it. They could make Void black. It's possible. It's very blue though. This is okay. This is a bit more blue than purple, but it's dark. It's dark. That's honestly doing this color wheel thing. You guys are right. It is more blue than purple. I didn't actually realize how blue this was, and that's really interesting. Because I noticed that Ionia is also a really light shade of pink. Like a really light shade of pink. So if they were to implement Void, they'd be leaving themselves open this kind of like magenta to black range. Which like, I mean, that kind of is the Void. Because they do, like I've seen the Void characters walking around in this League of Legends video game. And I mean, they do have this like pink, like magenta and purple aesthetic to them. So like, honestly, I'm kind of convincing myself out of this argument. Like, looking at it, I'm seeing that this is more closer to a dark blue. And I'm seeing how light... I mean, Ionia's pink is as light as pink gets. So, this feels like they've left themselves open for the Void, color-wise. Now, here's the real question. What would Ixtal's color be? Like, because, I mean, it would have to be jungly. It could be like a jungle shade of green. What's jungle green? It would be like, not like this exactly, but it would be some kind of jungle green, right? You know, like in Terraria. You know what I mean by jungle green, a little bit less yellow. Everyone fucking knows what I mean by jungle green. Lime? Yeah. Terraria is like the only game where the jungle is that color, actually. But like, that's what I mean. I think they do yellow for Ixtal low key. All right, that's a hot take. I mean, like, I know that they made Shurima piss colored. And like, I could see that as an argument for why they were they were leaving open yellow. That's a little too close. Like, that's a little too close. It's high quality content. I'm getting to the bottom of this, Dovagetis. I'm getting to the bottom of this. The color wheel approach, it's a good example of like Bayesian inference. Like, I can go back to these selected colors, and I can determine like where the blank spot is. So I don't know about Ixtal. I don't know like what their color scheme is actually going to be. I think the only thorough way to do this is to like truly like actually map it out on like an actual color wheel. I think that's the only way to do this. So I need to find a visual representation of all the colors and plot it out like a map, right? Like this, right? And we just need to go by, like, actually, like, correct the exact shade and figure out, like, whether they left themselves more room in the green area or, like, the kind of, like, purpley magenta area. That's the only way to know for sure. It's the only way to know for sure. Ixtal could be, like, between green and cyan. Ew! Like, aquamarine? Turquoise? Teal? That is actually possible. The purple area is bigger though. So here's the thing though. The human eye can see more colors of green, can see more shades of green than any other color on the wavelength. We have 3 different kinds of cones in our eyes, one for each color, green and red and blue, of course. But the human eye can see more shades of green than anything else. And this is, of course, because we evolved in a natural environment, in the forests, in the plains, and the jungles, and there's a lot of green, so it's easier to detect, like, micro shifts in, like, the foliage, and you can, like, you know, spot predators or prey, because, you know, mostly, humans are pretty much like apex predators. It's mostly a hunting thing rather than a predator thing. Because we have fairly few natural predators, all things considered. It depends on exactly the region we're talking. So we can detect more shades of green a lot easier, and this lends a lot of credence to the Ixtal theory. Because, I mean, Ixtal would have to be one of the shades of green, and I'll notice that they've only used one shade of green so far, and it's a pretty dark green. I mean, it's Shadow Isles, which it would make sense for it to be a dark green, but they've left themselves like a big window open for like a second kind of green, right? But now, like, looking at these colors, so, okay, if we're going into the shades of green, like, if we were to find a point, that was left open on the color wheel, so let's examine, like, where exactly Shadow Isles would be here, right? So, I'm just gonna move this here. So, Shadow Isles would be right here, I think. I think Shadow Isles would have to be there, right? Honestly, I could do this like with a color picker, but I think it's more fun to eyeball it with you guys. I think it makes a lot more sense. But that's a good area for Shadow Isles, right? Let's actually, I mean, we can double check fairly easily. Shadow Isles, I would have to say is closest in color to probably this. It's a step above. It's a step above. And Shurima is like, I know the color of Shurima because it's literally just like, you know, like I said, it's the color of piss. And Shurima's like right there. Okay, it's like right here, right there. So they've left themselves this pretty wide gap. I noticed this is like straight up like a 75-degree angle. No, it's like it's like a 75, almost 80-degree angle in the color wheel. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty nuts. All right, and let's go ahead and look at the purples. You know, we've got Freljord down here, whatever. Doesn't matter exactly where Freljord is. Targon is pretty blue. You guys are right. They've left themselves like a really big gap in the purples, like a really big one. Because Targon is much more blue than purple. Targon's like here. And then we've got, of course, like Noxus over here, just, you know, in the direct red. That's fine. And they've opened up this entire spectrum. Look at how big this is. Now, the problem is, like, obviously Ionia's in the pink, and I might need a different color wheel for that, because, like, this one doesn't really give, like, light pinks, which, bit of a flaw. But there's supposed to be, like, some kind of pink thing here. But if we look at the angle of trajectory here, it's actually, regardless of, like, what shade of Ionia is going to be, the angle is actually almost exactly the same. It's like a 75, 80-degree angle. Look at that. That's crazy. Basically, it's telling us nothing. All right, the color theory approach to this might not have gone anywhere. It might not have gone anywhere. It can't be Ixtal since it wasn't in the dev files, but Bandle City and Void were. So yeah, but okay, that's true. I mean, that like there's a lot of counter arguments. I mean, the biggest one staring at me is this map, though. This map, the fact that fully zoomed out, we have 10 regions, and there's no Shadow Isles. When was this map last updated? Can we go to the way back machine? I think you guys are lore nerds enough that you probably know this just off the top of your head. a year or so ago. See, that was my suspicion. I think that this map, yeah, sorry, I meant there's no void. Did I say Shadow Isles? Sorry, in my head, they're two thematically overlapping because they're both just like spooky death places or something. Void isn't a location on the map. Void is only if you zoom in. And that's the thing. To me, that's the biggest clue. Like, why would they do that? I mean, Ixtal is starting to make a bit more sense. I'm starting to get convinced by Team Ixtal here. I really, really am. Okay, now, I mean, I've got to give you guys the poll. Like, because I want to know. I mean, we have all this evidence. We have the Reddit post we just read, which was pretty convincing. We've got the map, which might imply Ixtal. We've got the color theory, which was a waste of 15 minutes of my life. And we've got the actual, like, you know, the general argument, which is what people were saying for a while ago, which is simply that Void does have more champions than Ixtal. Void, if you look on this map, has literally like 10 times the champion Ixtal does. Like, Ixtal has like 5 and Void has like 9. It's a pretty big difference. Although, I mean, we know that Zillion's not actually going to be in Void, same as Rek'Sai. So, we've got all these pieces of evidence, and we've just got to put it to the poll. Alright, it seems like chat, honestly, the poll is very much reflecting my personal stance. I think Ixtal makes a bit more sense than Void right now. Like, if I really had to guess, it could go either way. It truly could, but I think Ixtal has my vote. I think it does. You know, most of the points the Reddit thread brought up were solid. I only disagreed with a couple. When they've done all the regions, they will do expansions. And the expansions will be giving new cards to every region. And the expansions will also have thematic overtones that tie them all together. The same way Hearthstone expansions work. So, like, I mean, when Ixtal is the 10th champion region, whatever. When Ixtal's the 10th region, I'm sure, like, the first big expansion will be, like, a Void expansion. That, like, Void, it'll be, like, Void flavored. Like, remember how Hearthstone had their, like, their fucking, like, the gods of the something ones and the whispers and the Eye of Cthulhu kind of stuff? It'll be kind of like that, where, like, they do an expansion and it's, you know, it's all very, that's the flavor of it, right? Like, I'm sure it would make more sense for Void to be implemented in that style rather than being its own theme. But, like, I mean, here's where we really have to get into the deep stuff, because, like, we have to ask ourselves, what are the themes, like, if they were to make these actual regions and the themes were built around the mechanics. We have to then process that and think, okay, what would those mechanics even look like? Because again, theme is king, and this is a principle I very much agree with. Every region needs to be able to be broken down into like a very coherent theme, like one or two things. Shadow Isles is spooky ghosts and ghouls and death. PNZ is steampunk and grungy chempunk. White and gold generic righteous hero country. Black and red generic anti-hero country. Desert with Egyptian gods, so on and so forth. So I don't know about Ixtal. What would Ixtal's theme be? Ixtal would be too much like Ionia, like elemental magic. Dovagetis told us there was a clue that Reddit missed for like 8 months. That can give us a clue. Oh, that's true as well. It's like a jungle theme. Yeah, like jungle stuff. So I guess the more interesting question is like what kind, like, let's think on a mechanical level. What sort of in-game mechanisms would that even lead to? Like hunting stuff, like traps, feral and elemental magic. And here's another clue, by the way. Another thing that tips the scale, which is that, I mean, we've got these Shurima cards, right? And some of the Shurima cards do have like some pretty void stuff in their art, you know? Like, you know, in Xenotype Researchers, this girl's examining some tentacles or something. And then, what was the other card? There was another card where there were just like a lot of like void stuff. Yeah, Aspiring Chronomancer, it looks like they're combating some kind of like void thing. I think there was a third one, because I definitely remember something more tentacly, but you guys get the picture. You get the idea. Because yeah, it was Clockling. Yes, Clockling in this art, there's just like, they're just getting attacked. They're just getting ravaged by tentacles. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there are a lot of clues out there, it does kind of seem like Riot's just fucking with us at this point, because like, I mean, there's a pretty good amount of evidence both ways. It would be really weird if it was both. Like, I don't think they can merge it. It just can't be Ixtal plus Void. There's just no way. It's impossible. Now, like, honestly, we've come this far. I kind of have to know. I want to be able to find like some piece of evidence that is so strong that it just like tips me over the edge. It's a little difficult to see in these issues. Yeah, I mean, so these are basically like just early data mined versions of stuff. And here, Bandle City even exists. So it's like, I mean, this is like a really, really old information. I don't know if I would lend much to this. Void champs can be moved into other regions. Ixtal champions can't. It's like beta leaks. Yeah, I remember this leak from like a really, really long time ago. I mean, this is a weird crest, but I mean, it's just like, it kind of just looks like they might have just been doing that for the Void. They're neighbors. There's a small patch of Shurima between them. Yeah, sure. And the Void's all like tentacle monsters. Oh man. Are there like I want a game changer here, man. Where's the thing that breaks it all? Where's the piece of evidence that is just irrefutable? Let's look at Dova Geddes' comment on this. Cuz this is the biggest clue of them all. I love post theory crafting about the future. It's important to remember that we'll bring every champion into the game over time, regardless of the 10 exciting and interesting ways. I see many posts or comments that are full of passion. Some of these passionate posts, some are so invested for an idea, they're setting themselves up for disappointment. If the final region isn't what you expect or wanted, that doesn't mean you won't get the champions you love. So he's saying we're both wrong. When we announce the next region, please remember that regardless if it's the region you wanted, predicted, or expected, that the champions you love will come to Runeterra, the stories you love will come to Runeterra, the world you want to learn more about and explore will come to Runeterra. 10th region's great, and I'm really excited when the time comes to share it with everyone. Fervor and passion around this issue sometimes leads to absolute statements. Hyperbolic language worries me. We have an awesome community. Yeah. No, people definitely do get a little carried away. I mean, okay. So a really big clue is that, again, splitting up Ionia was a problem for them, right? Like, Dova Geddes did talk about that. He did talk about splitting up Ionia was going to be an issue, and because all of the champions that people like from League are literally from Ionia, because everyone from League is just a cringy fucking like Zed, Yone, Akali, Ahri. Everyone loves their just like ninja shit. So everyone loves all the Ionian champions. They had a hard time splitting it up. Yasuo, and of course the man himself. And so in this decision point of like, okay, we've got a hard time splitting up Ionia, I will say, and this is something that is like pretty big here that I don't know if it was explicitly mentioned in this original post, but, and this is like, this is really big for me because they have a lot of Ionian champions, and Dova Geddes said early on in the interview, he said specifically they were thinking about splitting Ionia up into 2 regions, like literally like Civil War style, just because they had so many Ionia champions that were in high demand that it was kind of disproportionately stacked compared to the other regions. Another potential solution they could have gone in is they could, instead of doing that, have a 10th region which allows them a little bit more leeway for taking things from other regions, right? Like for example, yeah, like Zyricon, like Ahri, stuff like that. Ahri, I think they definitely could. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the lore very well, but I think Ahri could absolutely be an Ixtal if Ixtal was a thing, right? That would be the clue. Everything KDA region. Yeah, what if they did just make a KDA region?
Highly appreciated where you just talk figure stuff out.
I think, to me, what this says, this is another big step in the direction of Ixtal for me, which is they have too many Ionian champions on their hand, and they want to like basically take that general thematic flavor and not bisect it, but definitely allow them more leeway for balancing out the quantities and the demand for different regions. Like, that's a really, really big one. And also, I mean, I'm getting some pretty big anti-Void vibes in general. Like, I think this is the deciding factor for me. For me personally, all of this combined, you know, they might want to allow themselves a little bit more leeway here. You know, we do know that Rek'Sai is going to be in Shurima. We know that Zillion's going to be in Shurima, which makes sense. And neither of them are going to be in Void. Once that happens, the amount of Void champions is pretty similar to the amount of Ixtal champions. And it would make sense for Void to come to the game later. It like Void Invasion being a future expansion past the 10 regions would make the most sense by far. Like the Void as like a thematic expansion makes more sense than Ixtal as a thematic expansion. And that's going to be the kind of thing that they're considering as well. And this is what Dovahgettis means. Well, I'm presuming, of course, but this is what I see when he says, you know, things will come maybe in different ways than you expected, right? So like, you know, Void might not launch as a region, but it might launch as an expansion instead, right? Like this is all fitting together. Everything fits together from this. They had to switch away from like a second Ionia, and I do think it would make a lot of sense for some of these ones. And I know it might seem weird if you like are deep in the lore. It'll seem weird at first that like some of these champions, and not all of them, but like some of these kinds of 9 would fit more into like Ixtal as a region. But you have to keep in mind, like, again, it's about the thematic flavor. Think about how many champions in Legends of Runeterra are going off of like just like what the champion is or does, as opposed to like where they actually should be in the lore, right? Like for example, it would make a lot of sense for Wukong to be in Ixtal. I'm sure that sounds weird for some people, and I don't even know why. I'm sure he's from Noxus or something. I don't even know, but it would make sense if Monkey Guy was in Jungle, unironically, and that's the kind of decision that we've seen them make in a lot of ways, right? I think after all of this, it's got to be Ixtal. It has to be. And Void is going to be the expansion. Kinjit isn't from SI, but she is. The thing is, yeah, there's so many, like, the reason people, like, look at this and they have, like, this reaction is because they're not really looking at the champions as they've kind of, like, already been launched in Runeterra. There's so many champions in Runeterra that don't really fit into regions, but the regions are kind of like bent to be able to fit them in for thematic purposes, right? There's like half of Shadow Isles isn't actually from Shadow Isles, but you know, it's just like they've got the spooky shit, right? That's it. I understand and even agree with you, but I still want you to be wrong. All right, this is kind of like Twitch chat as a comment in a nutshell. This is like every single, like, if I had to describe Twitch chat to something, it would be, I describe them as this comment. Thanks, guy. I appreciate it. Oh, Jesus. But I'm sold. I'm officially looking forward to 10th region Ixtal.